So where does your security come from? For many people, it's good old-fashioned locks and chains and bricks and mortar. I am probably the last person to talk about this because the vicarage front door has a mass of locks, which in fairness were not fitted by me. They were there when we arrived, and I think every time a vicar changes, the diocese thinks, "Oh, better increase that security, better up that game a bit." We've not got as far as having a video camera or anything like that, but we have got a little spy hole, and we have got the panic alarm as well, which we never use. Those are the sort of things that people look for when they talk about security. But of course, security is something that is really, really essential for people. And we look for security in all sorts of places. We look for security in places like our wealth and our status. Yes, the bricks and mortar, but also learning and our relationships, our wealth. All of those things bring security. But none of those things, of course, bring true security. And those of us who have now lived through the time of the coronavirus, we know that all those things that you think bring security don't. Even the things that now people are buying, like there's no tomorrow, the masks and the clever hats that have visors over them, and shopping online to make sure they don't go to the supermarket, none of these things really bring security. I find it interesting that at the height of the British Empire, people were paranoid about invasion. In 1871, a guy called Chesney, who was a serving British officer, wrote a book called The Battle for Dorking, Reminiscences of a Volunteer. And it was meant to be an eyewitness account of a German invasion of Britain. Germany, remember, had just been reunified in 1870. And Chesney was a disaffected soldier who felt that Britain was unprepared for what might come. And so popular was his book. It's not actually a very well written book, it has to be said, but it was so popular that it spawned over 400 variations before the First World War really did break out. Interestingly, people always thought it was the French who were going to invade. Got to keep an eye on the French. I mention this because one of the stories that came out of it indirectly, although it is a work of genius in its own right, is H.G. Wells's War of the Worlds. You see, instead of the Germans invading, it's the Martians who invade. And of course, Wells turns it into a complete classic. But he fed into that paranoia that was around, interestingly, when the British Empire was at its most powerful. It's almost like the more we have, the more we fear its loss. Something that I think Jesus warns us against in the Gospels. In today's Gospel, Jesus says that he is the gate. The Good Shepherd, of course, lays down his life for the sheep. He literally lays across the gate of the sheepfold and becomes himself the gate. The shepherd is a human shield who literally puts himself between the sheep and danger. And of course we are Jesus' sheep. But Jesus gives us the security that comes only from the Son of the eternal God. Only Jesus can make the promises that he does, because only Jesus is the Son of God. And only because he is the Son of God is he able to make those eternal promises. All other sorts of security, all the places where we try and hide and find a lasting security, none of them really last. The British Empire has gone the way of all flesh, the way of all empires. Nothing lasts forever, and we know that in our heart of hearts. And yet we still try and build these systems, these bunkers, these panic rooms, whatever they are, to try and keep ourselves secure. We can't. We can never be secure in this life. But we can be secure in Christ. being from that mythical faraway land of Yorkshire, I'm perhaps more impressed by your history around here than you are. I'm always impressed by the fact that the Empire State Building has, I think, 300,000 Norrie bricks in its foundations. They were the hardest, most long-lasting bricks of the time. And so in this amazing building, the Empire State Building, they form the foundation. But Jesus is the foundation of the true security that we can have as Christians, because only Jesus was there, as John's Gospel tells us, at the beginning of time, at the beginning of creation. Only Jesus can make that promise that he makes to his disciples in Matthew's Gospel. At the end of the Gospel, he says, I will be with you until the end of time, until the end of the age. Only Jesus brings us true and eternal security.